Russia has launched yet another missile assault on Kyiv, intensifying the pressure on the Ukrainian capital. But how much longer can the city hold out? Explosions lit up the skies over Kyiv as air defense systems scrambled to intercept incoming missiles during another night of relentless attacks. Kyiv was rocked by a fresh ballistic missile blitz as powerful explosions struck the capital, leaving destruction and chaos in their wake. Is this Ukraine's latest retaliation? Reports suggest Ukrainian drones targeted a refinery, signaling a forceful response to Russia's continued missile campaign. Russia carried out another overnight barrage of ballistic missile attacks targeting Kyiv on June 28, marking the latest in a series of long-range strikes against the Ukrainian capital. Ukraine's Air Force warned that multiple Russian ballistic missiles were heading toward Kyiv, urging residents to seek shelter as the threat rapidly intensified. Air raid sirens sounded across central and eastern regions of Ukraine, as authorities issued widespread alerts warning civilians of the incoming missile attack. Officials in Kyiv said the city's air defense systems were immediately activated, with crews working to intercept and destroy the incoming missiles. Loud explosions echoed across the Ukrainian capital shortly before 2 a.m., as air defense intercepts and missile impacts were reported in different parts of the city. A second wave of missile strikes followed at around 2:35 a.m., extending the assault and forcing emergency responders to remain on high alert. The overnight attack triggered fires near a residential building, a service station, and a non-residential facility, prompting firefighters and rescue teams to respond. Explosions were also reported in the northeastern cities of Sumy and Kharkiv, indicating that the missile assault extended well beyond the capital. Russia has increasingly relied on ballistic missile strikes in recent months, as progress in its ground offensives has slowed across several areas of the front line. Ukraine continues to depend heavily on U.S.-supplied Patriot air defense systems, which remain among its most effective tools for intercepting advanced ballistic missile threats. Kyiv has repeatedly warned that its stockpile of Patriot interceptor missiles is coming under growing pressure, raising concerns about sustaining its air defenses during prolonged attacks. Ukraine reportedly responded with a long-range drone strike targeting an oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar region, continuing its campaign against Moscow's energy infrastructure. Videos circulating on social media appear to show large flames and thick smoke rising from the Slavyansk oil refinery following the reported overnight attack. Russian authorities said the blaze was caused by falling drone debris after air defenses intercepted the incoming drones, according to local reports. Officials did not immediately disclose the full extent of the damage, and it remained unclear whether refinery operations had been significantly affected. Kyiv has intensified attacks on Russian oil and gas facilities in recent months, aiming to disrupt energy supplies that help finance and sustain Moscow's war effort. Earlier this week, Ukrainian drones also reportedly struck oil refineries in Russia's Bashkortostan region, expanding the range of attacks deep inside Russian territory. Repeated strikes on energy infrastructure have reportedly contributed to growing fuel shortages in parts of Russia, placing additional pressure on domestic supplies. According to reports, more than 20 Russian regions have introduced restrictions on fuel sales as authorities attempt to manage supplies amid continued disruptions. Russia-appointed authorities declared an emergency across occupied Crimea on June 27, following a sharp escalation in Ukrainian drone attacks. The move came after intensifying Ukrainian drone strikes targeted logistics hubs and military supply infrastructure across the occupied peninsula. Kyiv said the expanding campaign was retaliation for Russia's near-daily missile and drone barrages against Ukrainian cities. President Zelensky said Crimea had become central to Ukraine's broader campaign to restore justice and reclaim occupied territory. Ukrainian strikes have disrupted fuel depots, oil storage facilities, and key military supply routes across occupied Crimea. The attacks triggered fuel shortages and widespread power outages that affected multiple areas across the occupied peninsula. Sevastopol officials urged residents to reduce electricity consumption to help prevent overloads across the strained power grid. Crimea's occupation authorities also suspended fuel sales to private motorists as shortages continued to worsen across the region. Sevastopol also introduced restrictions affecting public transport, shops, cafes, and street lighting to conserve limited resources. Russia said its air defense systems intercepted approximately 660 Ukrainian drones during overnight attacks on June 27. Russia's defense ministry said one of the largest drone attack waves targeted Moscow, Crimea, and several other Russian regions. Meanwhile, Russian drone attacks killed civilians in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy regions during the latest wave of strikes. Ukrainian officials said a strike on Nikopol killed 2 people and left more than a dozen others injured. Amid the escalation, Russia and Ukraine also completed another prisoner exchange on June 26 under an agreed swap process. According to multiple reports, the latest exchange resulted in the return of 160 captured soldiers to their respective countries. President Zelensky said the released Ukrainian servicemen had been held in Russian captivity since 2022 before their return. The war continues to spread beyond the front line as both sides increasingly target each other's logistics and critical infrastructure. Russia claimed it had uncovered what it described as Ukraine's alleged plan targeting the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Moscow accused Kyiv of using drone strikes to target personnel working at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Rosatom's chief claimed Ukraine was attempting to exhaust the plant's workforce through repeated drone attacks on personnel. Alexei Likachev also claimed Ukraine intended to later blame Russia for any operational failures at the nuclear power plant. If we look at the past 24 hours, among the positive news, we can note that the 34th rotation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant took place. The 35th team of IAEA experts arrived at the plant yesterday, while around midnight the previous team left the site, crossed the Crimean bridge, and is now making its way back home. Despite significant drone activity, the rotation proceeded without incidents. The new IAEA representatives are now settling in, getting acquainted with the situation, and building informational links with Vienna and the agency's central headquarters. This is very important for us, as on July 10 further interagency consultations are scheduled, involving the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the National Guard, the State Corporation Rosatom, and Rostekhnadzor. We are actively preparing for these consultations. We will discuss our concerns. We are well aware of the 7 IAEA safety pillars. We comply with them. I would like to remind you that a key IAEA principle is the work of personnel and the ability of operators, and I quote verbatim, to make decisions without pressure. The paradox is that over recent weeks the main objective of the Ukrainian armed forces has been to exert pressure on personnel. These include strikes on the plant's infrastructure, including the turbine hall. We have spoken about this before. There are also strikes on the energy infrastructure of the city of Energodar. It is currently not on a stable power supply, and there are clear disruptions to both internet access and lighting in homes and streets. Of course, strikes continue against various elements of the nuclear power plant, not the reactor hall, but infrastructure where people also work, where operators are also present. In the past 24 hours, there was a strike on the design and engineering unit and the destruction of private vehicles, among other things. There are periodic strikes on the transport department and the destruction of official vehicles. A decision has been made, in order to reduce personnel movement in open areas through a more flexible staffing regime and shift-based work. Any personnel rotation has effectively turned into a special operation. We are doing everything to protect and preserve people. But the objective is clear, to exhaust the workforce, lead them into making mistakes, and then blame everyone, both the plant staff and us, for possible negative consequences. We support our workers. We support all residents of Energodar. We welcome these negotiations. We welcome the emphasis on the role of the IAEA in addressing the Iranian nuclear issue and nuclear program. We continue to confirm our readiness to resolve any technological challenge related to highly enriched uranium. Whether it is its dilution, reduction of enrichment, its removal and compensation of costs in kind or in monetary form, or some systemic solution involving several countries depending on the outcome of negotiations. At the same time, seeing some positive movement forward, or more modestly, the absence of negative dynamics in the Middle East conflict, I have recently approved a plan to restore staffing levels at our construction site at the Bushehr nuclear power plant. As is known, only about 20 Russian specialists remain there. If the situation does not worsen, in the coming weeks we will begin restoring our personnel at the direct site in Bushehr.